First of all, I want to say thank you, and of course I want to apologize that I was not with the initial news release, the press release that we had. I was attending a funeral of a former York County Sheriff's deputy who had, his funeral was that same afternoon, so I apologize for not being at that. You're going to witness the incident that occurred, actually I believe this occurred February the 25th, about 7:30. This first incident, and this involves our officer that shot Bobby Knight. And of course, what we want you to do, a couple of things I want you to think about, and I want you to dwell on. If we look at this, and of course we've got policy, and we'll be glad to share our policy and what have you with you in regards to officer-involved shootings. But one of the things that I want you to do is, as reporters, is to report this. I can't tell you how to report it, but what I'm asking you to do, I want you to think about what you're doing, and I want you to look at this and first answer these questions. Did the officer do what a reasonable officer would have done when confronted with the same situation? And of course, if you look at a case and it's going to before a jury, these are some of the things I think that they would have to look at. And you must evaluate the situation available, evaluate the situation that was available to the officer when he acted. What I'm saying is, you must stand in that officer's shoes. You know, if you're out there at night and you're out there by yourself and you're making these traffic stops, you've got to realize that these officers must act to protect their own safety. You know, one of the things we want them to do is to go home safe at the end of their shift. And of course, what we're asking you to do is to put yourself in these officers' shoes and think about what they're seeing. And one of the things that you've got to realize that these split-second decisions, and you're going to be able to take this video and you're going to be able to zoom in on the objects in this particular case. And we know in this particular case, the object we're talking about is a walking stick, walking cane. You're going to be able to zoom in on that. But did this officer have time, or the mechanism, the capability, the technology, with his eyes that night, standing some probably 40 foot away, to zoom in on this object and to determine exactly what this object was? Those are the things I want you to think about when you watch this video. And of course, I'll be available to answer some questions, a few questions if I can, if they don't get involved in any litigation or whatever, and I'm going to have to turn to my staff attorney, Kris, for some help in those regards. But you know, this officer that acted that night, he did not have the capability that you're going to have when you are able to edit this film and show this video to the general public. And the only thing we're asking for, we're not making excuses in anything that we've done. That's not the reason we're here today. And I don't want it to sound like that I'm making excuses for what that officer did. Not at all. This thing is still under investigation. It's under investigation by our internal affairs. It's also under investigation by SLED, because any officer-involved shooting, typically we call in an outside agency to give a fair and impartial investigation of the case to determine whether there was any wrongdoing. And of course, we have reviewed this. We've looked at this film time and time and time again, and we'll continue to do so. But you know, the thing that we want to do is just to be able to say, when everything is said and done, that what we did was right. Again, a very unfortunate incident that took place, because I will tell you this, Mr. Knight did not do anything intentionally wrong either. There's one thing that I pray that will come out of this. You know, we always look for something good to come out of every bad incident. And one of the things that I pray that will come out of this incident, and I'm personally going to do this in South Carolina, I will be talking to the members of the General Assembly. I will be talking to the South Carolina Sheriff's Association. And I pray that the South Carolina Sheriff's Association, our director, will go to the National Sheriff's Association and see if we can get something passed in legislation that will require the South Carolina Highway Department, every highway department in this country, to put some instructions in our manuals about what to do when the police stop you. Folks out in the Midwest, it's a different story altogether of how you can react and what have you whenever a policeman stops you. But can anyone in this room today tell me what your manual says about what action you're supposed to take when a police officer pulls you over? And I will tell you this, it's not in there. And I will tell you this, you will get different answers from different people. But the society that we live in today, one of the things that you do not do, you do not exit your vehicle and go meet the police officer. You do not do that. You can, there's no law against it. That's the sad part. But the police officer is going to be giving you some real direct orders when you exit your vehicle. He's going to tell you what he wants of you. But it should be in the manual, and it should be written down where every new driver and every driver in this country has the same instruction as to what you're to do when a police officer pulls you over. And I hope that you will get the same from this and maybe help us start publicizing what we would like to see. I can't speak for North Carolina. I can't speak for the rest of the state. That's the reason we've got to take it to a state level and even to a national level to maybe get this passed throughout the country. But I would like for all law enforcement agencies throughout this country to watch this video and help us get this passed.
He knows. He doesn't know the age of the driver. He doesn't know the sex of the driver, the race of the driver. And I'm not quite sure if he even knew how many people were in the vehicle at the time of the stop. So I want you to be aware that the only information as you watch this, if you're putting yourself in the place of that officer, is that there's an expired plate on this truck. That's all you know. Okay?
Longfellow Street.
Motel's gonna be the apartment. I mean, trailer park. Hey, sir. 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 Oh. Hey! Shots fired! Shots fired! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
If you have any questions at this time, we'll be able to answer what you may have.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, it all happens so fast. And I know you said it's still under investigation, but you guys have looked at it, and Trent, you said this, comment on it before, but best you know now, can you say whether or not it was a justified shooting?
I am not going to make an official call, but the officer is on administrative leave, and I will make this comment for whatever it's worth. I've been in this business 42 years, and if the same thing happened to me that happened to Officer Knox on that particular night, it would have been the same result. I would have had to take the same action that he did. Yes, ma'am.
Why release the video now? It's been 2 weeks. Was there anything that kind of sparked you guys wanting to release this video?
Not at all that I know of. You know, when we have an incident like this that occurs, we want to review it, we want to look at it, we want to study it. We want to, of course, this particular incident, as you well know, there's a lot of people that hides behind the social media and make their comments, and this has run rampant throughout the country, all the way from California to Pennsylvania, all the way around. We saw social comments about the action that my officer took, and of course we could have waited till the end of the investigation But at this particular time, I saw no reason to wait. And Kris, of course, Kris, my staff attorney, makes most of those decisions, but I make the final decision. But she certainly, we certainly make these decisions together. Is there anything else you want to say in regards to at this particular time?
There was a request for the video. Typically, after an incident happens, we do get multiple requests. This time, I'm aware of one. But I think the problem with it is people want instant answers, and sometimes we don't have instant answers. Investigations take time, and you have to look at a fair investigation for Mr. Knight, and you also have to look at a fair investigation for Deputy Knox. Deputy Knox, and I would have preferred, quite frankly, that the investigation would have been allowed to go its full extent, and that the solicitor had an opportunity to view it and make his decision and publicly announce what his decision was on it. But that wasn't something that we were going to be able to do. So we decided at this point it was probably the best thing to go ahead and provide that video at this time, and hopefully the investigation will come to a conclusion within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I know Solicitor Brackett has had a recent death in his family. He's lost his father very recently. So I'm sure that that would also cause a little bit more delay. But we anticipate an answer shortly, I would think. And I also wanted to respond to that question about being justified. It's not really a word that can be used in this context. Again, we go back to what the use of force requirement for an officer is, and what he does has to be objectively reasonable. And I think that in our situation, we viewed it and we believe that it is objectively reasonable. Now, granted, after you find out Mr. Knight is getting the cane out of the back of his truck, certainly that changes the perception. But at the time Officer Knox acted, he had no information about this gentleman, no information about his age. As you mentioned, this happened extremely quickly. If you go back and check your time frame, it will be less than 30 seconds from the time this truck stops to the time the shooting is over. So looking at it from what information that Officer Knox had at the time and what you viewed on that video and what you heard in Officer Knox's comments, his anguish over truly believing it was a shotgun and that his life was absolutely imminently in danger, and the time period that he finds out that this man had pulled out a cane. And after he tended to Mr. Knight and was able to then fully start appreciating what had happened to him, you heard the emotion as he talked about that it was a shotgun, that he thought it was a shotgun. And I think if you go back and you listen to it, if it doesn't cause some emotion to come up in the average person, I would be surprised.
Sheriff, I wanted to ask you, just going off what Kris said, just what that does to you to hear that. It was extremely emotional tape, and this is one of your guys, and he's there crying, obviously devastated over what's just happened. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
You know, I think that I run an organization here that my officers understand they're right, that we're going to be behind them. And, you know, if they're wrong, then they have to face the consequences. And there's a fine line sometimes between those two issues. This, if you look, even if you look at our policy, sworn personnel are authorized to fire their weapon and use deadly force in order to protect the deputy or another person from what is reasonably believed to be an imminent threat of death or serious physical injury. This officer felt at the time that he pulled his trigger that his life was in danger. And I stand behind this officer. And to hear my officers, let me tell you this, you don't know this officer. You don't know this officer. And I can tell you this, I didn't know this officer until 3 years ago. That's how long he's been with our organization, approximately 3 years. And if you were to meet this young man, he's probably as nice of a young man that we have on our force. He has just exemplified himself to be just a great, great officer. And then something like this happens, and our concern is with him, his family, and what effect this will have on him, and we'll have to monitor that. And there's been a lot of questions about administrative leave. Why is he on administrative leave? Because at this particular time, we have not determined this officer acted improperly. And for him to be on administrative leave is for his own good and for his own protection, and not only that, protection of this agency, because we got to know that he's okay. Did that answer the question, Greg? I know that was a long.
In the interest of time, the last question, because we got to move on to the next video.
Last question, okay. Like you said, the whole interaction is very quick. Do you know how many times Deputy Knox actually fired the gun? Do you know how many shots were fired?
I'm sure that there's.
I prefer that we wait till the SLED investigation comes out. We didn't do the investigation itself. I believe it was 6, but I believe that, you know, that is what it will show, but SLED is the one who collected the casings, collected the evidence, and making those determinations.
And I think it would be fair to say he fired his weapon multiple times.
And I also want you to keep in mind as well, as when this officer fired those shots, he was to the side of his car. He had no cover. He's backing up, trying to get cover as he's firing his weapon, which is probably why he shot multiple times, because he's just trying to get safety in his mind.
You know, and we'll finish this one up, but you know, I think one of the things that I want to, and maybe a little bit back to Greg's question. You can say what you want to about police officers. We're no different than you. And I've made this comment many, many times, that if I have a police officer that I thought was not afraid of anything, I don't think I want him working for me. Officers fear just like you fear. Because whenever that is just human. That is probably one of the most human things that we do. And that's how officers survive.